Hello, family and friends. Coffee with Cody here with another edition, third in the series. Lots to talk about, but of course, I think today what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about the family. Thus, the topic following the title, The Whole Fam-damily. A lot of you know most of the brothers and sisters and the parents, but maybe not into the detail that I'm going to try to go into with you. For those of you that have subscribed that didn't previously know me or my family, well, maybe it's a little bit of a history lesson and some learning about the Codys. Usually when you hear the word Codys, it's a collective noun for all the siblings, brothers and sisters that I have. But I think what I'm going to do is start off talking a little bit about those that came before me. First of all, I'd like to talk about my dad. Dad's name was Leo Anthony Cody. He was born to Edward and Julia Cody in 1931, February. He was the youngest of three siblings. James Aloysius was 14 years older than Dad. Leroy, I don't remember his middle name, but Uncle Leroy was 10 years older than Dad. And then Dad himself was born to a 40-year-old mother, Sylvia. That's her middle name. Julia Cody, and Edward Cody was 50. So Dad was kind of one of those late childs. Mother, on the other hand, Mother came from Springfield, Illinois. She was born 1935 in November. Her dad was William DiGirolamo, and her mother was Martha Geraldine Carney DiGirolamo, and eventually McClernand. Those two, Mom and Dad, met in San Diego during the Korean War. Dad was stationed in the Navy out there. Mom graduated in 1954, and they got married in October of 1954. Mom was an only child, and like I said, Dad was one of three boys. Well, they got married in Springfield, Illinois, where Mom was originally from, before they moved out to San Diego. And Dad was a native Montanan, born and raised in Wolf Point. Once the wedding took place, they moved to Wolf Point, living in a basement apartment on the north side over by the water towers, a place called the Burnison Apartments, and there was a basement house up there. Not a basement house, but it was a basement apartment in a housing complex. That's where I was born, and Tracy, my brother Tracy. And then we moved out in the country sometime between Tracy's birth and Tony's birth. I guess I should tell you a little bit about our siblings. I was born in September of 1955, Timothy John. Brother Tracy Francis was born August of 56. Sister Tony, whose birth certificate reads Marie Antoinette, she was born in September of 57. Then came along Terrence James, born November 1958. The next siblings were twins. First one was Joseph Todd Cody, and his twin was Jerome Thomas Cody. Now, those of you know Jerome Thomas as Tom. Our brother Joseph Todd passed away from Sid's death 2 months after they were born. The twins were born in January of 1960. Then came along Sister Mary Christine Cody, who was commonly referred to as Tina. Tina was born at Christmas In fact, there's a story about Mom leaving midnight mass, the Christmas mass, to go have Tina at the hospital. Father O'Reilly was the pastor at the time, and he interrupted his homily watching Dorothy Ann Cody leave the church to go have another baby. After Tina, then came Leo Edward. Leo Edward was born in October of 1963. That was followed by Martha Irene, and Martha was born in January of 1967. Troy Anthony was born in December of 1968. And finally, pulling up the rear, our baby brother, Dennis Patrick Cody. Dennis was born in June of 1971. Now, the spread there, if you do your math and put the years together, I was born in September of 55. Dennis was born in June of 71. So I was not quite 16. So I was 15 when Dennis was born. Like I said, first couple of years, we were in the Bernison basement apartment. And then we moved out to the farm, on a farm that my Uncle Leroy had. Dad was going to try to become a farmer. He had and continued to work for Highline Wholesale. That was owned by O.M. Paulson. Those of you that have a little history for Wolf Point, O.M. Paulson had a sundries and cigarette and creamery, and they delivered milk locally and then sundries to communities and bars and things like that in the local area. And I think they went over to Valley County and then to the state line in Roosevelt, and then up north to Scobie and Plentywood. So they covered Daniels, what was it, Sheridan? Yeah, Sheridan up there, Roosevelt and Valley, and they didn't go south of the river. We lived on the farm from probably, I want to say, 59 to about 65. Well, actually, it was 64. From 59 to 64, we were on the farm. And then in 64, Dad was appointed the sheriff of Roosevelt County. The sheriff at the time, Sheriff Schumann, was killed in a car wreck, and the county commissioners got together and, for whatever reason, appointed my dad as the sheriff. Now, there was a little bit previous history in police force. Our grandfather, Edward Cody, was a deputy sheriff back in the early 20s. So I don't know if it had anything to do with the fact that Grandpa Ed was a deputy sheriff back then or not, as far as the appointment for Dad. But anyway, in 64, he became the sheriff of Roosevelt County. And rather than have that long drive every day, we went ahead and moved into town. Dad collected on his GI Bill as far as VA loans for houses. And we ended up with a house, the old Treholt house. It was an old railroad house built in the 1915s on Dayton Street. Previous to that, there was a transition period from the country to the house that we took possession of in 1965 on Dayton Street. We lived in the basement of a house where, those of you that live in Wolf Point currently, it is the Dunns. Mike and Lisa Dunn live in that house currently. But in the basement, there was kind of an apartment set up. The Codys lived in the basement, and up on top, it was the Matajoskis. So we kind of grew up with the Matajoski family for many, many years. The Matajoskis had a homestead up on the Scobie Road, and that's where our basement house was, on my uncle's property, about 6 miles north of the junction of Highway 13 and US Highway 2. And so moving into town then, at that time, like I said, when we moved to town in '64 to the Matajoskis, Leo Edward was just a baby. So there was Tim, Tracy, Tony, Terry, Tom, as Todd had passed away, Tina, and Leo. I don't know if you're counting on your fingers, but I think that's 7 maybe? Yeah, with Martha, Troy, and Dennis, the last 3. Well, we were there for about a year before we moved into our house on Dayton Street, and we occupied Dayton for quite a while. Many of us graduated while living in that home. We actually had that home, I think, until 1988 or 89. So we lived there from 65 to 88 or 89. Dad started out as a milkman and then delivered sundries. I have some vivid memories of traveling with him. He also delivered milk locally around the Wolf Point community, and I would get up in the morning and go with him and help him deliver milk. We used to put, back in them days, the milk came in jars, and gallon jars, and we would put those gallons in quarts and half gallons, and we would put those out on the deck. And I remember having a little, kind of an octagonal shaped thing that if it was pointing up to 3, that means they wanted 3 milk. Now, whether they had quarts or half gallons or gallons, I don't remember. I guess it depends on what the route was, but Dad knew what to deliver, and I would help him placing the milk on everybody's step. And then the highlight after that was heading to the Wolf Point Cafe and having breakfast in the back room with the local yokels. I shouldn't call them yokels, but they were the godfathers of the community, and I felt pretty special. A young punk sitting there with all those guys, just gathering around, having breakfast and shooting the breeze. It was a great memory. Jimmy Caracqua, the owner, he used to have a little tin coffee can, and how the guys paid was they just put their money inside the coffee can. They didn't have to go out and pay at the register. So that was one of my all-time favorite memories of growing up and helping Dad with the milk route. And then, of course, Dad became sheriff, and we got involved in campaigning, some things like that. But I'll save those stories for another day. Growing up in a big family like that, it was something special. And our folks really passed away at young ages. Dad died of a heart attack in 1976 at 45. He'd been the sheriff for 11 years, and at the time he passed away, Mom still had 7 children at home under the age of, Terry, I believe, was a senior maybe when Dad passed away in 76. Tony had just graduated, so Terry was heading into his senior year. So it was Terry, Tom, Tina, Leo, Martha, Troy, and Dennis still at home. And I was living there working at Dad's bar, so helping out a little bit. I eventually went back and picked up where I left college. Those are stories for further on down the road, my college days. But growing up in a big family like that, we had our good days and our bad days. We had a big vacant lot. We held a lot of activities in that lot, both internally with our family and then the neighborhood kids. We would hold track meets there. We would play baseball, football. It was just a fun time growing up in Wolf Point. We were a big Catholic family. Every Sunday, we all got our Sunday bests on, and Mother and Dad would march us to church. And Usually we were late, or even if we weren't, the Codys occupied one of the front seats and pews in the church. And we took up pretty much a whole pew. Uh, One of the greatest memories I have there of going to church every Sunday was one time we came in late, and Troy was kind of acting up, and Mom grabbed him by the ear to get him to settle down. All you could hear was this big shout in church, "You better knock it off, old lady." And that was kind of funny, and there was some roar from the crowd, and pretty humorous. Anyway, it was not uncommon for a lot of large families in Wolf Point at that time. Of course, you had the Codys. The Matajoskis were probably 6 of them. We used to go to my grandmother's house after Grandpa passed away. She lived at 501 Edgar, a block south of the Catholic Church. And we would collect there after church, and Grandma would feed us lunch and stuff. But right south of Grandma's place, her apartment, was a big 2-story house with a basement occupied by the Hanson family. That was Virginia and Melvin Hanson. They called him Papa. So we grew up with the Hanson family as well, the Matajoskis. Another big family that was a Catholic family was the Egerberts. Now their family was a little bit older. We did catch the tail end of their family. The Egerbert family, about our ages, were Tommy, who was a year older than I was. Then there was brother Mark. Mark, I believe, was Tony's age, graduated in 76. And then it was their twins, Brian and Beth, who graduated with brother Terry in 77. And then the tail end of the Egerberts was Julie and Frank. So those were the younger Egerbert kids growing up, and they had some older siblings too that we knew later on as time went on. But it was really special. A tight-knit bunch. We've looked out for one another throughout the years. After Mom passed away, we promised everybody, and we promised her that we would get together every so often for a reunion. And we've been doing that basically every 2 years since Mom died in '99. And Mom passed away from kidney cancer. So cancer runs in our family, and so does heart trouble, with Dad passing away at 45. But Mom, what an angel, raising all those kids by herself. If it hadn't been for people in the community and dear friends to help out, I don't know how we would have made it. But those were different times, growing up in Wolf Point and in big families. There was country living. Country people helped us out a bunch with chickens and beef and milk, and even when we were in town and Dad was still alive, I can remember every Saturday was bake day for him. He was always baking bread or cookies or something. So Dad was the baker. Mom, she was half Italian, so if it wasn't a big kettle of spaghetti, it was lasagna or some sort of Italian dish. And a lot of the kids growing up with us, they were all part of our family. Our kitchen table was always open. There was always something to eat at the Codys. Mom never let you leave hungry. Quite a memory there. Of course, those friends that were non-Catholics, they had to endure the grace before every meal, because we had about a 5-minute prayer service to start our meals with regular prayers that we said every time we ate and gathered around the table. So that was quite an experience there as well. We've had family reunions from Michigan to California, Montana, in Wolf Point and Butte there. We also had a reunion at my place in Nebraska when I was living there. And then my daughter and her husband hosted in, well, it was the year after COVID in Colorado. So we've seen quite a bit of the country. North Dakota. That's where our next one's headed this summer. And this is the second generation that will be hosting that one. For a long time there, each of the siblings would take turns hosting at different locations. So we've got to see the country, got to travel a little bit, but most of all, it's the 4 days that we get together as brother and sister and share memories and tell stories. Just have a little social event, watching all of our children grow up, and now it's the children, as we grow older, it's their turn to take on the role. So hopefully we'll see how that goes. We're going to have that in July in Fargo. I remember more memories about Sundays and going over to the Hansons, and then of course another family in the neighborhood that we would get together every once in a while with and playing was the Sansevers. The Sansevers just lived to the east of the church. So lots of big families in Wolf Point back in those days. On our way home, when we lived out in the basement house on Highway 13, we would also occasionally stop at a Shipman family. Those of you that remember the Shipmans in the Wolf Point area, they moved to Malta sometime in the 60s. But we used to go Sunday on our way home from Grandma's. We would stop at the Shipmans, and we'd always maybe have a little supper there. And then it was a special evening where we watched Walt Disney's Wide World, and then Wonderful World of Disney, I guess it was called. And then we also watched Bonanza. And once those two were over with, we eventually headed back out to our basement house on Highway 13. So, lots of vivid memories growing up. Mainly today's video was just to share some of that with you, share some of the information about our family, some family background about Grandpa and Grandma, both of our grandpas and grandmas. Now, we had a step-grandfather that we always called Grandpa, and that was Grandpa McClernand. That was Grandma McClernand. Martha Geraldine Carney was her maiden name, and Mom's dad was William D. Girolamo, and they divorced, and Grandma married Patrick J. McClernand, who was a bricklayer, and they moved out to San Diego, I want to say early 50s, maybe 53. Yeah, because Mom completed her junior year. I think she did her senior year in San Diego and graduated in San Diego. So anyway, that's where our roots came from. Dad was a Wolf Point boy. Mom was born and raised in Springfield. Dad met her in San Diego during the Korean War. When he was in the Navy there, they got married and moved to Wolf Point, and we've been creating that history ever since. Every 2 years we're getting together. It's always a great time. Maybe if you'd like to know more about that, you could leave me some comments about it. If not, I'll move on to a different topic on Thursday. I'm going to try to kick 2 of these videos out a week. Kind of enjoying it, occupying some time. I'm recording this on Sunday afternoon. I'm going to release it later on this evening. Oh, and by the way, Brother Tom's off to my right here. He doesn't want to get into camera. He came for a little visit. He went to Aspen to see Sister Tina, her and her husband, for a couple of days, and he's on his way to Kansas City to see his daughter and grandkids and visit there for a while before he heads back to Fargo for the reunion there. So we'll all be congregating in Fargo, like I said, in July, and we're looking forward to that. So with that, this is Sunday's version number 3. And once again, Coffee with Cody, signing out.